Guys, my name is Elizabeth Johnson, and today for my final speech, I will be trying to persuade you that children and young adults wearing a uniform to school is not easier nor beneficial to the family or the child attending school. Wearing a uniform to school is not only expensive, but it can also rob children of the freedom of self-expression and individuality. So, how many of you had to wear a school uniform at any point during your life? I had to wear one while I was in middle school, so 6th through 8th grade, and then parts of elementary school, which included 3rd and 4th grade. At the time I was in elementary school, I didn't really care too much because I was so young, but while I was in middle school, I didn't like it at all because I was a young teenager and I wasn't free to express myself through clothing, even though all I owned was Hannah Montana jackets and sequin shirts. The school I went to was really restrictive in what we could, or for a better sake of terms, could not wear. We were pretty restricted to a red, gray, or white polo shirt, khaki or dark blue pants, and a brown or black belt with white tennis shoes and a white jacket with a clear backpack. We weren't even allowed to wear colored ponytail holders or have any kind of decorative pieces on our person. You can see now what I mean whenever I said it felt like a prison. Since my time in middle school, though, I have noticed the uniform rules becoming a little more relaxed since I went to school, as a few years later, my little brother went and he informed me that they weren't so uptight about the uniform rule. Children are sent home every day from school simply because their uniform does not meet the standards. I'm not saying to break the rules by any means of the imagination, but when did it become more important about what type of shoes you're wearing or the type of jacket that you're wearing than the actual education they're gaining from going to school? It's my belief that the look of a student should not be means of being sent home just because it may distract another student, which seems to be the case lately. So, do you or do you not agree? What's your stance on the subject? Mine is that their education and what they are learning in school every day is much more important than what they're wearing, and if it could be a distraction to someone. Now, do I think there should be guidelines and standards to what they are allowed to wear and what they're not allowed to wear? Yes, I do. Do I think that grade school children and teenagers should be policed into what to wear every day, to as extreme as what color their belt should be? No, I don't agree with that. I'm giving this speech today because in middle school, I was sent home because my white shoes had Velcro straps and not laces, which apparently was the standard at the time. If our education system thinks the type of fabric holding my shoes onto my feet is more important than what we gain from going to school every day, then I think our school district needs to get their priorities straight. From the type of shoes, belts, and even socks that we should wear should not matter as long as we're learning. It's school, not the fashion police. Children should be able to wear what they want and express themselves as long as it is not too over the top or distracting to other students. I understand that they put the rule in place so it doesn't interfere with the students' studies, but when we start sending kids home over it kind of defeats the purpose of why uniforms became a rule in the first place. So, with my first presentation on why school importance are a good idea, I started off with the pros of wearing them. With my speech today, since we have to argue both sides, I'm going to start off with the cons, since we're to argue both sides. Then I'll go over why they're a bad idea, which kind of goes hand in hand with the cons. I don't think they should be banned, but the school districts should loosen their grip a little bit on this topic. I will then go over the benefits to not wearing the uniform and how, in fact, it does not decrease bullying. So, the cons of wearing a uniform. George Carlin, a famous comedian, once said, "Don't these schools do enough damage making all the kids think alike? Now they have to make them look alike too?" Some of the cons in relation to school uniforms include, but are not limited to, both parents and students said that school uniforms violate their freedom of expression. Students might choose to express their individuality through other means such as piercings and tattoos, which would be harder to regulate than just the clothes they're wearing. Parents have raised concerns about the cost of uniforms compared to the cost of their children's own clothes. Although not as common, uniforms could single out students as being from a certain school, which may lead to trouble with students from other schools. Uniforms could interfere with religious clothing like Muslims or yarmulkes, and new policies for school uniforms can become time-consuming and hard to enforce. Next, I'll go over why uniforms aren't a good idea, which, like I said earlier, goes hand in hand with the cons. As many as 1 in 8 schools in the United States have started to implement the uniform policy. While those in the United Kingdom and surrounding areas have been implementing this policy for decades, it's still a little bit newer to the United States. Only private schools in the United States were the first to start wearing them in 1987. Maryland and Washington, D.C. were the first states to implement them, then other states started to follow their lead. So, why aren't they a good idea? Uniforms only fuel commercial interest. Uniforms are only activating commercial interest, and they are not solving the concerns that uniforms were originally created for. Numerous companies treat the uniform system as a major source of profit. After all, every year, Americans in total have to spend $1 billion every year on the uniform. Uniforms can also be detrimental to adult development. Although this issue may seem like a simple one, it can play a big role in an adolescent's transition into adulthood, because they were not able to make choices as simple as the clothing they were to wear every day. Since uniforms were made mandatory, they are not given the chance to decide for yourself, which was one of the major milestones of adulthood. Uniforms can affect one's self-image. Uniforms aim to give everyone a gender-neutral look. Most of the time, that is not the case for students. Students have different weights, body types, and heights. When they look at themselves in the mirror, they dislike their self-image because they feel like they don't look as good as everyone else or look their best. Another factor is uniforms can attract bullies, as opposed to the opposite, which I covered in my last speech, which I said they help with bullying. So, a study done in 1999 by experts at Texas Southern University showed that bullying incidents increased by as much as 12% after the rule making uniforms mandatory. It is believed that uniforms can stop the violence because they don't. Even when everyone's wearing the same thing, a certain student's personality can stand out, and there's other things that students can pick on each other for, such as their family's socioeconomic status or something else entirely. Uniforms are boring. Uniforms are boring for a multitude of reasons. Some ways they are boring are their colors. School uniforms colors are known to be the most tedious colors, such as navy blue, green, khaki, black, and other boring colors. People who support uniforms state the uniforms they wear will help prepare children for their future occupations, which is not always the case. A lot of jobs do not require such a strict policy on uniforms. Uniforms are expensive. That goes hand in hand with the profit that I was covering earlier. It's shown that Americans spend about $249 on uniforms every year. When you put together all the people in the United States that spend money on uniforms, it comes out to $1 billion every year. You can buy the Solomon Islands for $1 billion. Even though this cost is deemed reasonable by middle-class citizens, the cost can be a burden for lower-class families. Uniforms encourage conformity instead of personality. Students are taught to stand out. With uniforms, the schools are actually petitioning for the opposite. Uniforms force students to follow the rules of conformity and are not able to express themselves fully. Lastly, uniforms can even violate the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution guarantees your right to freedom of religion, assembly, and right to petition. Most importantly, it assures the citizens' freedom of expression, which is violated by requiring students to wear uniforms. Freedom of expression is not just about saying what you want to say, it's also about imparting ideas regardless of limits and boundaries. Expressing your ideologies, beliefs, and philosophies, unfortunately, are hindered by school uniforms. For my last point, I'll go over the benefits of not wearing a school uniform. So, it can help students learn to adapt. Students who choose their outfits every day for school learn how to adapt to ever-changing standards and contexts, a quality that can serve them well as adults. It can encourage independent thinking. Children and teens that face a large range of clothing styles at school also face a range of visible social groups, economic classes, and ethnic or religious traditions. While these differences can ignite conflicts and even fuel social segregation, they can also inspire kids to appreciate diverse points of view and engage in critical thinking. It can promote conversations with their parents. Arguments over clothes give kids an opportunity to express their identity and values to parents, and equally important, they give parents a platform for raising their values. It can monitor gang affiliations. When students wear their own choice of clothing, teachers, administrations, and law enforcement will be able to monitor gang membership more easily because gang members often wear affiliation symbols or colors. Finally, it can ease budget burdens. Allowing students to wear their own choice of clothing makes life easier for low-income families who may not be able to afford uniforms, and for the schools who might be required to provide financial assistance to such families. While many families might find uniforms cheaper than brand name clothing, the price of a standard issue uniform might stretch the budget for some families. With my speech today, I hope to have informed you of both sides of the topic that I gave. Either you're for uniforms or you're against. And with the information that I've provided you with for both topics, I hope that you'll make an educated decision. Thank you.